being a leader comes with a social responsibility. And I think part of it being an entrepreneur, we have to educate ourselves, must educate ourselves.
Welcome to the second session of Can Next 2020. My name is Sten Salovier. I am the head of Next and the curator of the Next programming. And as the last session of Can Next today, we're going to explore some really fascinating topics. We will talk about female leadership and women entrepreneurship on globally and some great initiatives that have been taking place in the startup and technology community. We're going to talk about a film called The Great Hack and how that film has changed lives, both personally and for all of us. And we're going to talk about data and super platforms, how they use, process, and manipulate our data. And especially, I guess, these topics are really relevant at the present time of the global COVID epidemic. Before we get into the session, please do check out other next sessions in this week as well. Tomorrow we'll be in the evening hosting the final summit of the DFFP Next Wave program, where we have the young, amazing film and media entrepreneurs showcasing their projects, and they're ready to meet you. On Wednesday from 12 o'clock till 4 o'clock, we're going to showcase 10 amazing European technology companies that want to work with you and showcase and utilize their technologies for the benefit of the film industry. On Wednesday night, we will have an amazing performance by the legendary film composer Ryuichi Sakamoto, a work incomplete that he has just recently produced. And we have a great chance to show it here at the Marché Film Festival de Cannes. On Thursday, we're going to have the annual Next Summit, and on Friday we're gonna close the program with the topic of virtual humans. But without further ado, let's get into the session. As of some practicalities, Marché Film has turned in the past two months or so into a global streaming operation, and obviously producing these live streams is quite new for us, but we try to do our best. If you have issues with sound, please close your Zoom and reconnect, and that should solve the issues. Today, the discussion is all about you, the audience. Please do ask questions to our two amazing discussants and panelists by using the Q&A feature, and we're going to get them in about 30 minutes when they're ready to ask your questions. But without further ado, I would like to introduce two of our great discussants today who I admire a lot. I start with Brittany Kaiser. She is the co-founder of Own Your Data Foundation. She is also a co-founder of the Digital Asset Trade Association Data, which is a non-profit lobbying firm advancing legislative reform, protecting individuals' right to control her digital assets. The mission of Brittany and her Own Your Data Foundation is to promote media and literary education, especially in the field of technologies that we are using every day. Brittany, of course, is the primary subject of the original documentary, The Great Hack, which exposed the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and that film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. And she is also the author of recently published autobiography on the Cambridge Analytica called Targeted, and that's out from HarperCollins. Horie, she is the CEO and founder of Silicon Valley-based Women's Startup Lab, and this is an organization which is dedicated to creating a world where women thrive through innovation and collaboration. And Arie is internationally known for her passion, results, and public speaking. She recently received a Bulgari Aurora Award in Japan for her work for developing and supporting female entrepreneurship. And she's working tirelessly to change the landscape of Silicon Valley, but also globally, for creating opportunities for female entrepreneurs to accelerate their path to success and funding. Arie is also a founder of an amazing platform called Wise24, which is a 24-hour global showcase of female entrepreneurs. And that event was held just a few days ago. And Arie will be able to talk to us about Wise24 as well. So welcome.
Hi. Do you want me to, hi everyone. This is Arie, founder CEO of Women Startup Labs. And thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us virtually, although it would be really fun to see you both in Cannes, of course, in person. And hello.
Yes, it's
Good day, everyone. So pleased to be here. And yes, I do wish we could be together in person today, but it's a pleasure to have been invited to participate virtually, and good job for organizing all of this in just a couple months.
Thanks so much, Arie. Let's kind of dive in sort of into the heart of the matter right away. You're very much known as a kind of a fighter for equal opportunities for women in business, and I guess your statement has been that this is a big systematic issue.
Mm-hmm.
You're originally from Japan. You're now in Silicon Valley, and you're organizing a global event. Tell us your story.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, I was born and raised in Japan. So I mean, made in Japan, but energized by United States, Silicon Valley spirit, and inspired by the entrepreneur and creative people around the world. And I grew up in a country where things are quite suppressed, or I don't think they necessarily think they're suppressing. They just have this long history of a culture that label women to be a certain way, and we operated in that expectation. And when I came to the United States for just a 1-year exchange student program, I felt like first time I had a full fresh air in my lung. Felt like, wow, I can breathe, I can say things. And I remember many people asking me, it's up to you what you want to do. And I keep thinking that question is so irrelevant. It's not about what I want, it's about what people want, my team or community want. Because in Japan, your individual thoughts supposed to be not the first things that's supposed to come out. And from being that culture to coming here in the United States and really asking yourself, what matters to you, what matters to society, I think it just is such a long leap from where I was and where I am now. Did a lot of different startup work here in the Silicon Valley, but what I really liked about is having seeing a problem and has a culture and resources and a brain power, and in some level it's money, not for necessarily women, but has that structure to let you try it and keep going at it. And I think, being where I am, and I don't necessarily have a checked off a credential that some of the Silicon Valley people consider to go by. We're still here, we're doing a lot of things, and there's many entrepreneurs around the world who reach out to us because of the possibility. And so I guess, we work together with a number of people, and we're just really making impossible possible. That's our job.
So shall we try to see a video clip of the Women's Accelerator Lab?
Yeah, sure. There's a little bit older, but a lot of essence there. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, let's try this out.
Hi, my name is Lauren Koenig, and I'm the CEO and founder of TWIP.
My name is Chloe Chick. I'm the founder of Sisu Girls.
I'm Aparna Pujar, and I'm the founder and CEO of NetFavors.
My name is Machi Takahashi, and I'm from Kyoto, Japan.
and I am the CEO and president of ATR Creative.
Being a part of the Women's Startup Lab was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me. I just knew that it was going to change. I knew it was going to change everything.
I felt like I knew what I was doing before I came here, and then I found out that I didn't know.
What if my product doesn't work? What if I fail? These emotions or thoughts are very common for every entrepreneur. But going through the program actually prepared me for dealing with these challenges.
This is a place where you get down to business. There's no filter, and it's fantastic because it's not about the tone of your voice. It's not about your background. It's about like realizing what you want to accomplish and getting it done.
You're talking things through, you're forced to deal with situations, and so from that, there's a lot of learnings that they've gotten that you can extract and apply to your own startup, and vice versa.
All those just positive energy, just radiant, like in and out, and it's a really wonderful experience to be with people of the same caliber and as the same energy as you.
Again, that connection and that relationship building with some very high profile people, CEOs of major tech startups that have done very well. That again, you wouldn't have that intimacy. You have a one-on-one session with CEO of a global tech company. You really can go deep and pull out some very insightful learning. They really focus in on communicating to your customers, your investors, or even partners. Yeah, entrepreneurship is really hard. It's a lonely journey. And when you have folks that can go through it with you, that's awesome. You should take advantage of it. You have to do this. Don't hesitate. You have to do this. Because I was exactly you. I was trying to find the videos on the internet. I was looking at the social media account. It's a decision that you should not even be thinking about. You need to do this, period.
This is a very big challenge. If you're up for it, and if you want to invest in yourself, if you want to invest in your company, then take that leap and come to one of the most magical places in Silicon Valley, which is the Women's Startup Lab.
You're allowed to be.
So, how did the Women's Startup Lab come about?
Yeah, I started late. I mean, I had my corporate job and have done a number of small, well-funded startup. And then some of you have experienced this, but I had two younger children and a sick mom who had a cancer. And so I was juggling primary caregiver, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work. Trying harder wouldn't work anymore. Just the system didn't work. And so I said, okay, I'm going to start my own startup. And so when I started working at it, I started seeing a number of other women knew the problem. They're industry expert, yet when they pitched, the audience was full of young men who never understood what we're talking about. They were clueless, but then they held the majority of, it's a decision making, and they're moving forward, and it wasn't getting traction. So I say, wow, if that woman's idea can even resonate, what are we doing to us? What are we doing to our society? Technology is the one reshaping our society. That's supposed to help all of us. But so many of the women's idea that is like no-brainer idea was completely responded by, is that a big enough industry? I mean, like, what are you talking about? And so I realized there was issues. So, started with, well, there's something we can do. Let's not have women to give up. That was the first thought. And so I started it. And then deeper into, I've been doing this for 7 years here in the Silicon Valley. And just the data is just depressing, right? And like 93% of venture capitalists are men. Like if you have a room full of 100 people, 93% male investor, and having to have them understand some of the things that women are intricately, deeply involved in the lifespan of a human being, you can expect them to know everything. But also not paying attention to be aware is a crime. You can't just say, well, that's not my experience. It's not good enough. We have a responsibility to create something extraordinary for our society through the money and through the technology. And it's not individually attacking investor, but we as a society have to look at it as like, well, 93% of investors are men, and they're smart and a caring individual, but we have to say, stop, right? If they have a significant influence, we need to look at the formation. And that's where I started with helping women entrepreneurs, thinking if we get better, it's going to be fixed. And that wasn't the case. It is a systemic issue, because it's not the women are lacking in skill or even getting attraction. Sometimes they're like, 2-3 times have a better attraction than competitor, and the male-led competitor get 5 million just like that. And we've seen not once, but over and over and over in our industry. And so, we shifted in 7 years. Instead of just working on women, we start looking at how could we have a systemic change? How could we all involve? Because we care about same thing, which is advancement of innovation that shape our life in a way that everybody's life gets better, right? So that's kind of how we started and how it's shifted now.
So tell me a few practical examples. I have a personal case of a Croatian animation producer who I happen to know, and she was great already before when she went to the Women's Startup Lab, but when she came back, she was a superhero rock star, and I would even say another person. Clearly some magic happened, both in her skills, in her confidence, and etc. So what is the secret source of the Women's Startup Lab and the Hito House concept?
Yeah, and we get that, many of our advisors too have gone through different accelerators as an advisor, and they came back and said the quality is different, because we care. We're not just running it. Like, we want to see the result. And how we design Women's Startup Lab is in the scheme of the world, male design, unconsciously male design. What is the essence that makes women shine, or they gain the confidence, how they make things happen? We approach things and we see things differently. It's not black and white, so I don't want to waste time arguing about that, but there's a generically or socially, culturally, there are certain things that we gravitate toward. And so our design of the program itself really look at based on the social behavior, social economical issue to psychology altogether. We put together our residential program. Women are really busy. They're not going golf and drinking and, creating this bonding. And we decide to shrink down the program to 2 weeks. It's short, you think, right? But we design a way that's intensive. That's where it comes back to Hito House. We have this residential home, luxury home that about 12 people can actually stay. And so 24 hours times 14 days, entrepreneur locked in, immersed with a Silicon Valley advisor, and having really honest conversation. And some of the advisors say, oh, I will be there 1 hour. And then they get into it and they stand it up like 4 hours. And so it's, if you think about, we don't lack in information. We know how to lose weight. Knowing is a great step, but it doesn't guarantee your success. How many of you know how to lose weight and being successful? So there's something about knowing and having a result. Right? Here is this between. So during the 2 weeks, we go much deeper part of your brain, how you think about startup, how you perceive yourself as a global changing entrepreneur, and how would you give them that gut, right? Confidence, but conviction that they can see it. Before they say it, but they didn't really believe they can be big. And so during the program, we bring all those Silicon Valley pros that actually spend the time one-on-one in the way that they see it. Oh my gosh, I was missing several zero of the market size. And there's a number of entrepreneurs that they were already, I got it. I'm a really hot entrepreneur in my region and thinking they know everything. And then they came here, they realized, oh my gosh, I'm bigger than I thought. And I think that's what happened.
I guess that would be kind of a call to action for all of these amazing film producers, and there's absolutely great chat already going on. You can even be better and bigger if you believe in yourself, right?
Right. And sometimes you can try harder, right? Try harder something you produce yourself. But what got you successful at this point to the next level, you have to have a completely different system, ecosystem around you. So it's not just about you. The people sees it and pull you up, or it's pointed out how strong you are in certain things and amplify it. Because you have to stand out in the way that people say, she's it. And so, we being fit to fit into society. We fit to be a girl who would be asked to give you a higher salary, asked to be married, asked to go out for a date. We've been given the permission to go get it, right? And suddenly you go out and they said, well, you have to think bigger, you have to ask more, you have to be confident. Well, society have taught you not to, and you never really had a practice. So having this full of immersive experience with other women entrepreneurs who's doing it, having the same problem, which you didn't even think that was a problem, but suddenly like lid is taken off and then you see the full sky. It's like, oh my gosh. And it's not just realizing it, you start having this ecosystem around you, entrepreneur, investor, advisor, and advisor who have done it, making a global changing company, not once, but several times. Now you begin to see, I'm on the right spot. There's a circle, you were outside, you were great outside in this region. And then you go in the next layer. And when you come to Silicon Valley and in the inner circle, you begin to see, now I see myself going from here there because I know him, she said this. And so we Women Startup Lab focusing on not necessarily the knowledge, which there's a lot out there, and then different accelerators serve different things. We focusing on, you're already great. And there's a time that you can't just work hard. It's not about you. You need to have other people who's taking to the next level. So we focus a lot on hito, which is a Japanese character, means human. Two people leaning on each other. There's a character, means hito, human. So we emphasize on, top advisor here in the Valley who cares about. So when they come, they're ready to do something. So I think one of the exciting things that one of the entrepreneurs said, Arie, I've gone to this accelerator, this accelerator, this accelerator. They all had impressive advisors as well. But one thing is so different here in the Women's Startup Lab is that when those speakers came, they made sure we knew how great they are, talking about their success story. But Women's Startup Lab, when those famous people came, they spent the time and made sure that we know we are great. And left with their cell phone number, said, make sure you call me, I help you. And people like, Phil Levin is a founder of Evernote, example, that many advisors have been around with us for many years, and they insist, like, call me, okay, call me. And it really helped them.
I think that's a really amazing statement of saying you are great. We need to build connections and ecosystems around you. My last question to you, before we have a chance, and you, the audience, have a chance to have questions later, is what's WISE 24? You did a few days ago something quite remarkable. This is not only about you. It's not only about Silicon Valley. It's not only about the Women's Startup Lab, but this is potentially a beginning, or I would even say a rapid start of something quite bigger.
Right. WISE 24 is intended for 24 hours global innovation event, Innovation Day, where we get to showcase top female entrepreneurs from different parts of the world. And it's being supported by local ecosystem leaders regionally, and then they'll come together. And we will never see the change we want to see without ecosystem change. And so this is designed to have a government, a regional startup organization that is specifically involved with WISE 24, supporting and educating themselves and what exactly is happening to preventing women to thrive. And it's not women's broken. It's not women are lacking. It's a system. So WISE 24 is to bring the region together. The other part is globally, all the angel investors are invited. They said, well, Arie, I get it. Women are great, but they seem like not technical. They're not faithful entrepreneur. They're conservative. They are this and that. I don't have enough female entrepreneur for me to invest. So, well, that's the reason I don't have any female-led company that I invested. So I said, great, I will solve the problem. So that's why we did this 24 hours. So you have to find at least 30 minutes an hour. And so we provided the 74 female entrepreneurs around the world. So, you know, they said they have a problem and then we fixed it. I mean, not a silver bullet, but if that was a problem, don't let those excuse or good reason in your mind to stop you to find a great entrepreneur. Let us show you they are there. So that was the event. And we did it all remote, 3-track event, and all remotely managed by, you know, I think 5 different countries, volunteer from 5 different countries. Actually, sorry, it was like 16 different countries because including chapter leader. So it was a massive operation, but all managed by remotely. And we have a speaker like Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, Pascal Finette from Singularity University, and Audrey Tan from a Taiwan ministry, who's quite well known for digital transformation. So it was very exciting. Speaker was there as well. So yeah, highly, recommend for all of you to try it next time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Arie, for this inspiring mission, I would say. I know a very few people who speak so passionately about her mission, and I hope this conversation of ours will also inspire a lot of filmmakers and a lot of female film producers who have joined us today. Brittany, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
With Arie, we quite quickly came to the topic of systemic change.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me if I'm wrong, if I say that your life has been, at least in recent years, all about systemic change.
Absolutely. I would argue and say that it always has been. I've always been trained as an activist, and as much as I'm inspired through entrepreneurship, human rights activism and political activism has always been kind of the core of what I've worked on, and that's why I was so lucky to be a part of The Great Hack and a global activist documentary that has been able to push forward quite a lot of political and legal initiatives that are not just of interest to mine, but of interest to the global technology community, the privacy community, and even parents and teachers that just want to protect their kids online.
So shall we watch the trailer and then go straight into this very, very important conversation?
Yes, thank you.
Who has seen an advertisement that has convinced you that your microphone is listening to your conversations? All of your interactions, your credit card swipes, web searches, locations, likes, they're all collected in real time into a $1 trillion a year industry.
The real game changer was Cambridge Analytica. They'd worked for the Trump campaign and for the Brexit campaign. They started using information warfare.
Cambridge Analytica claimed to have 5,000 data points on every American voter.
I started tracking down all these Cambridge Analytica ex-employees.
Someone else that you should be calling to the committee is Brittany Kaiser. Brittany Kaiser, once a key player inside Cambridge Analytica, casting herself as a whistleblower.
The reason why Google and Facebook are the most powerful companies in the world is because last year data surpassed oil in value. Data is the most valuable asset on Earth. We targeted those whose minds we thought we could change until they saw the world the way we wanted them to. I do know that their targeting tool was considered a weapon.
There is a possibility that the American public have been experimented on.
This is becoming a criminal matter. When people see the extent of the surveillance, I think they're going to be shocked.
And I still fear for your life.
Yeah.
With the powerful people that are involved.
But I can't keep quiet just because it'll make powerful people mad.
Data rights should be considered just fundamental rights.
This is about the integrity of our democracy. These platforms which were created to connect us have now been weaponized. It's impossible to know what is what, because nothing is what it seems.
Brittany, The Great Hack was one of the most, I guess for me, one of the most important documentaries last year. And definitely the combination of your work and I would say your mission and your revelations, and then also I would say the power of the filmmaking. This systemic issue came into a global attention. How did your collaboration started with these filmmakers and bringing this very, very important political matter and story to life?
Of course. So the day that all of my first whistleblowing interviews hit the press, a big expose in The Guardian, within a few hours, I was contacted by two incredible film directors, Karim Amer and Jahan Mujim, who had made, The Square, which was the first big Netflix documentary to get them nominated for an Oscar. And they had also done, Startup.com and Control Room. And I got a call from both of them saying that they had been trying to make a film about data for quite a few years, actually, in fact, since the Sony hack in 2014. So this is now the end of March of 2018, and they had still not found, the story to actually explain to people what data is. What they always say is, how do you make the invisible visible? Now the world's most valuable asset is something that is not legislated or regulated in most places in the world, and people don't have the ability to tangibly understand how important it is and what it can be used for. So they said, well, this really seems to be blowing up. I think this is the story that we want to follow. Can we come find you and do an interview? I didn't know that interview would end up being 9 months of working with the team and the film crew and such inspiring producers. In the theme of this conversation, I got to work with so many incredible women who believed in my story, believed in the activism that I was doing. Geraldine Dreyfus and Nina Fialco and Lynn Lear were some of the biggest, producers and very hands-on throughout the making of this documentary. And that's really how it kicked off. They called me for an interview. I thought it would be one interview, and then we had a very serious collaboration over nearly a year before we launched at Sundance last January.
So let me ask you something else, and I apologize if I'm getting a little bit upfront personal on this. So you're basically on something very, very important. Let's now imagine 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and then somebody calls, let's make an interview. What was going on in your mind?
Well, at the time
what was that relationship emerge? How did that emerge? I'm sure there's some amazing producers who would be able to go and expose or build something like that. But how do you build that trust? How do you take that step? It's not an easy one.
It definitely is not. I think it was really when, Kareem, one of the directors, and his film team came over to see me in Thailand. I didn't exactly expect him to come all the way there. When he called me the day that I became a whistleblower, I was getting on a plane because I didn't know what the international fallout would be of the revelations that I made. And he decided to take the leap and fly there with a team in order to do the interview. And I could immediately tell that he had been working on those issues for, longer than I had, many years, and really cared deeply about making a difference. I mean, he was completely aimed at social impact. And you could tell that the entire team felt very passionate about these issues and really cared about making a difference and giving someone like me who, at the time, especially being a young woman, I was very intensely targeted by the media and judged much more than the other whistleblower who was a man. And they felt like I was not being given an ample platform to share my story and my voice. And after the first week together, I started to have a very intense trust for the film directors and the producers and how much they really cared about making an impact and giving me the tools I needed to do in order to continue on my path.
The film came out last year. A lot of things came to forefront. What has changed? What has not changed? You changed, yes. But if you kind of take it into a kind of a global perspective, where are we going with this right now?
Right, so in order to understand where we're going, I think I should mention for a minute where this came from. I mean, I started in the intersection of technology and politics and data in 2007 when I joined the first Obama campaign and was part of the, at first, very small new media team that invented social media strategy. So I started seeing all of this coming into really what was the first data-driven communications for a politician in the campaign that I really believed in and that I saw as genuinely doing good in the world. And kind of like Arie has been able to provide for all of these female entrepreneurs, after the Obama campaign, I traveled around the world working for different nonprofits and charities and United Nations departments, teaching them how to use data-driven communication so that they could fulfill their goals. Data-driven strategy is really just a scientific way of understanding how you can engage with people, how you can get people to care about what you're saying. And so whether it's naive or just over-optimistic, I really saw these tools in general as something good and that could be used for positive social impact around the world. And that's really why I joined Cambridge Analytica. And over the almost 4 years that I was there, these tools started to become more and more sophisticated. You started to be able to collect more and more data from individuals, more personal and private information from everything that they're doing on a daily basis, their location moment to moment, everything that they're consuming, everything that they care about, to the point where it became very obvious that if these tools are in the hands of bad actors, that they can so easily be abused. So over the past few years, especially since the Cambridge Analytica Facebook revelations that I took part in, it has become obvious to a lot of people how little control we have over the technology industry, and that for the past many decades, most tech companies have become kleptocratic, is the way that I like to call it. They take as much away from us as possible in order to build profits instead of actually finding a model that is good for consumers and good for users and has any sort of ethical or moral guidance. We've gotten to the point where it's quite obvious that a lot of tech executives are not going to make it an ethical or moral decision. It's only a profit-driven decision, and therefore we have to work with lawmakers to build a legislative infrastructure to make sure that the development of technologies that we're using every day, especially with our families, with our kids, that there are ethical and moral guidelines that they are legally bound to. And that's what it's really come to. And that's why I work so much on legislation, but also on awareness and education, which I've been able to see that film has been the most impactful way of teaching people big complex concepts that are not easy to grasp in typical communications.
We're living in quite unprecedented times, in terms of the global COVID epidemic and etc. And it seems, some of these questions around data, not only for its commercial purposes, but really for the well-being or ill-being of the society. Whether we should track people, to ensure that the virus doesn't spread, or we shouldn't track them, or how should we track them, or et cetera, et cetera. This is kind of a very prevalent topic. It seems across the world and here in Europe as well. What are you seeing in the United States? A lot of these big platforms, Twitter, for example, has taken a very clear stance on some of these issues, but we also see that Facebook is somewhere, I would call it in an ignorant bliss, where things are kind of going on. How have you seen life change or adapt in this past quite extraordinary 3 months?
So we're in a very crucial time right now for data rights, for privacy, for the development of cutting edge technologies. And that's for two reasons. One, it's an election year in the United States. And also we've been in the midst of a global pandemic. So we already had quite a lot of issues that we were trying to address with the technology community in regards to the upcoming election. As you mentioned, Twitter and Jack Dorsey have taken a very specific stance where they have recognized that we do not have the ability to either human capital or even in back-end technology to police fake news and disinformation and negative uses of data-driven targeting on their platform. So they're trying to make an investment into that, and they're also trying to say, we're going to moderate content as well as we can by flagging content that we believe is not acceptable on our platform, and by banning political advertising altogether. Mm-hmm. So that's been a very interesting approach, and I think that they're doing the best they can in many ways. They could always be investing more, they could always do more, but they are trying to show everybody that we do not believe that some of the content that is on our platform should ever reach the eyes of consumers. And while we respect the right to free speech, there are times where moderating content is appropriate and the right thing to do. Facebook, on the other hand, has decided that they refuse to censor political content, or they call it censorship. But if anyone here knows anything about human rights, the freedom of speech is not an unchecked right. I do not have the right to slander or libel you or suppress your vote or incite violence or racial hatred upon you. Those are laws we already have. They're just not being enforced on the Facebook platform, especially in regards to politicians who Mark Zuckerberg has decided can do and say whatever they want. And then we as a people that are actually held to community standards have to judge the politicians for themselves, whether they are lying, whether they are inciting violence. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. Probably the biggest threat that we actually have to democracy at this point in time. We've recently seen that blatant disinformation about how to fill out the census, and then also Nazi propaganda coming out of the Trump campaign has finally—
I remember that NASCAR event just recently, which I guess is the worst example.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so finally we're seeing Facebook deciding to censor only the most extreme of content which would be deemed illegal to be published anywhere else. And it's sad that we have to get to that point in order to see progress, which is why I spend a lot of time with legislators, bringing technologists and legislators together so that not only the people that are writing our laws can better understand the back-end technology, but so that technologists can also understand what are the legal concerns that we are trying to regulate against bad actors for. I do believe that most technology entrepreneurs seek to connect the world and give us tools to make our lives a better place. But unfortunately, those tools are so easily abused if they are not well managed. Now, when we come to coronavirus, now contact tracing has become one of the best proposed solutions to stop the spread of the coronavirus and future viruses and illnesses that can so easily permeate across the world. Yes, I totally agree. We should have data-driven solutions to saving human life. But what we're seeing right now is that these apps are written without clear terms and conditions. We don't know where that data is going, who it's going to be held by, what it's going to be used for, who it can be shared with, and how long they're even going to keep it for. So I have helped write with an incredible group of privacy and data protection activists alongside Senator Kevin Thomas in the state of New York, the first coronavirus contact tracing data protection law. And that is Senate Bill number 8448. And we have stipulations in there in terms of how long data can be held, what it can be used for, if terms are changing, that you have to get another consensual opt-in from people. That data cannot be shared with law enforcement, which is incredibly important at this time when peaceful protesters are being targeted across the United States and across the world. And there are anti-discrimination clauses in there in terms of how the data can be used. So these are incredibly important concepts that need to be put into law in order to make sure that technology develops in an ethical and moral way and can actually have a positive social impact.
What can we do as citizens and what can storytellers do? We are here at the Cannes Film Festival, which over the years has I would say started culturally many revolutions, scandals, revolutions. It has shaped our lives in terms of what we understand as art, what we understand as performance. It has directed our attention to social issues and so forth. You know, the last year's Palme d'Or Parasite was really about focusing out the dividing social inequality, not only in Korea, but also globally. What can storytellers do in that space? What can citizens do? What can storytellers do? Is there an opportunity?
Absolutely. There's a huge opportunity here for content creators and storytellers to be able to address some of the most systemic issues that we're seeing in society today and help educate the general population. You know, as global citizens, we are not very digitally literate. And what I mean by that is that most people don't understand what their data rights are or how to protect their own privacy. Most people are not media literate in order to easily spot fake news and disinformation or even hacking and phishing attempts. Most of us are addicted to our devices and don't know how to have a healthy relationship with technology or even use emotional intelligence when we're interacting with people through a screen. So all of these concepts have now been released into what's called DQ, Digital Intelligence Quotient, like IQ or EQ. This is a new global standard that came out last year through IEEE, supported by the World Economic Forum, OECD, UNICEF. And what we're working on right now, and I'm partnered on this through my Own Your Data Foundation, is to make sure that we can reach 1 billion children over the next couple of years, specifically before they have their first device, so that they can have a comprehensive digital education, which we did not all receive in schools when we were younger. And while we're teaching kids, we're teaching parents and teachers how to support those concepts at home and in the classroom, and then also doing professional training. Because as much as all of us have such bad habits because we didn't have a digital education growing up, we were just taught how to type, how to send an email, but not that each of the words that we typed would be recorded and bought and sold and traded around the world. You know, we can break some of our bad habits. We can have a better and more ethical relationship with technology and learn how to protect ourselves and our families at the same time. So I think telling those stories, getting the information out there that technology can be positive, as long as we understand how to use it in a protected and professional manner, as opposed to, you know, just falling into these bad habits. There's so much to talk about there. I mean, I am in technology because I know and I believe that the future of us all being able to save human life and lead better, more efficient lives for all the goals we try to achieve can be done through cutting edge technology. But it has to be managed so that it cannot be abused by bad actors in order for us to see this bright future that we all dream of. You know, AI and data science can change everything for the positive if we make sure that there are rules that we all agree to abide by and develop our technology accordingly.
Thank you so much. We have now time for taking a few questions from the audience. For Brittany, there's a question. This last weekend was noteworthy for the damage done to Trump's rally in Tulsa by TikTok and K-pop fans. How do you view the new generation of keyboard activists fighting the technological realm?
I thought that was completely amazing. That somehow these young social media users around the world, who are generally seen as a vulnerable population online, actually tricked the people who are supposed to be the data experts of the Trump campaign into believing that they had tens of thousands more supporters than they did by getting, you know, false flag signups. Now, I spend a lot of time speaking out against the way that the Trump campaign team uses data. So I think the fact that they were kind of undermined and their fire was fought with kind of digital guerrilla activism was, I mean, spectacular in a way. You know, if these people were more ethical about the way that they use data, I would say that's unfortunate for a campaign team to not be able to plan for an event accordingly. But I think most people here know how I feel about the Trump for President campaign. So I really think that it's beautiful that these tools can still be used for activism to say, you know, we do not believe in the way that you are putting out your message. We don't believe in the way that you treat people. We don't believe in the way that you use data-driven communications online. So guess what? We can use our tools in order to show you that you aren't as powerful as you think you are. And again, this is the first time I ever started really using technology was that same thing. You know, I was training as a human rights lawyer. I was an activist, you know, working with different charities and nonprofits, you know, big NGOs like Amnesty International. But the whole point was, how can we figure out how to use data so that we can not I would say undermine, but in a way go below the radar of authority in a way to show people that we can connect with the general population. People do care about what we're talking about, and whether or not the government or the powers that be will enforce human rights in the way that we want them to be enforced. We can use technology in order to build a movement and to achieve the goals that we're finally trying to achieve. So it was really nice to see over the past few days that is still alive and well.
So we have a few questions here about funding as well. I'm urging all our participants, if you have also questions for Arie. I would have already several. You know, how can I join? What can I do? How to benefit from that amazing mentorship? Please do ask them now, because our time today is limited. And please post them through the Q&A feature below. Brittany, there's a few more for you. What is your take on the USA stance on data ownership versus EU? As US citizens, how can we move the ball in the right direction?
Right, so I'm in the state of California, which is the only place in America that has data rights. So I'm very proud to be living here right now and to work with legislators on the development of how we can get companies and organizations to comply with the California Consumer Protection Act and some of the new advancements that are coming through, you know, in terms of the update to CCPA, which it, you know, goes further than GDPR in many ways, is even going to provide in the state of California funds to help companies with compliance that don't feel like they have the capacity to comply with new data laws. a lot of states are learning from that. There are now states all across the country that are writing their first data protection and privacy laws. I've been helping write the New York Privacy Act, which is very exciting. It is even stricter than CCPA, and if that gets passed, then it would be the national standard for the United States. We don't have a federal law right now. It's been really difficult, obviously, to get this type of legislation through in the past year or so. I have hope that if some seats change up in November, that Congress will reconsider some of these initiatives so that we can be as protected as GDPR has made Europe. But I must say that GDPR has been very difficult to enforce in the EU, and that compliance mechanisms are not where they need to be yet. And also, I would say citizen education is not where we need to be. So again, to you content creators, to you storytellers, talking about how important some of these issues are and what we can do in order to build a better digital future for ourselves, especially while we're all living a completely digital life right now. Please do tell those stories, and feel free to reach out to me anytime at info@ownyourdata.foundation.
So let's take a few last questions. Yeah. Arie, that's for you, actually.
Hold on. Sorry. I have a question later, Brittany, maybe you can also address, because all those entrepreneurs are early adopter, and they are committed to bring the technology in a way that it benefit not only for their dream to come true, but for the society. Many people has a big dream and their heart's in the right place. I think it's also important. The topic you talked about should be prerequisite for them to become an entrepreneur. And I can see that particular topic like this should be shared among entrepreneur organization. Like, we can do that. Often we provide the seminars, get together only for what they want out of desperation of funding. But I think we all have to ask ourselves, what is our social responsibility? Not doing what we need to do to survive and succeed, but what else, flip the coin the other side. Well, being a leader comes with a social responsibility. And I think part of it being an entrepreneur, we have to educate ourselves, must educate ourselves and topic that you bring in. And, today I profoundly realize that's some missing piece that I would definitely want to talk to you. And all of us are being a responsible entrepreneur to build the, company. So we're not repeating bad history or the current
absolutely. Absolutely. It's important for anyone who's building a new organization to understand what that should look like. What we have started to call it in the entrepreneur community is data ethics. So not what can you legally do with data, because there's a lot of things that you can do under the eyes of the law in America right now, but what should you ethically do in order to build a practice internally that makes sense? And, especially for new small companies, your cybersecurity strategy is as weak as your one staff member that doesn't know how to spot a hacking or phishing attempt and clicks on a link and takes down your entire company's backend systems. So this type of basic education, beginning that as part of an early stage development training program, I think is very important, and that's some of the work that we're doing out of my foundation. So I'd love to help all of the women that you're working with.
Yeah.
Arie, there's a few questions for you. It has been said, and quote, women venture capitalists do not invest in women-owned companies, and they tend to women entrepreneurs more negative questions. Do you find that to be true?
Wow. I haven't heard that many times. Let's put it this way.
So is that a real answer, or is that a polite answer?
A polite answer. And I think, but, and then the other flip side too, that you hear, why all those successful women public have to say, well, I don't like to be labeled as women. And, you wonder, why are they being harder on other women? And instead of kind of attacking, you step back and realize what is the social culture that made them to be that way. Many of the women who have to fight in the male-dominated venture culture, And at any moment you become emotional, you've been labeled as weak and not capable. Any moment you actually say something about women entrepreneur, they will label you as your emotionally driven investor. So they will write you off much harshly than other male investors say, you know, she's really good. She really understands this market. But because you're women venture capitalists, you might be labeled. So they're also dealing with, I worked so hard to build up to this point, and I don't want to be labeled as weak or doing a favor. 6 years ago when I started Women Startup Lab, I went to knock every single female venture capitalist and say, hey, this is a great way you can help us. And many of them say, no. And it wasn't just me, but there was a number of people who did that, and I said we couldn't get female venture capitalists together. Now there's all raise and a wonderful movements happening, so it's all going to the right direction. But I think there is cases that they can come across negative, and I think both men and women, we are product of society, and I think we women too have a strong bias toward women. And one thing I just said recently, that when you see women entrepreneur funded, we go, yay, women got funded. And then you start looking at every single one of them. And do you see the pattern? When they say women, somebody said it's a white young women. And I don't have a data right now with me, but there was a conversation about even when they say women, we invested in women, is again very stereotyped. And so there's all those, social biases that play a role, and also, with the venture capitalists, women venture capitalists. So I always told our entrepreneur, don't assume women investor will be easy on you. And sometimes male investor go extra mile to really try to see what's there to examine. So at the end of the day, the road is always hard. And sometimes a place like Women Startup Lab, we have both men and women who understand this bias issue, and they are aware. And so they can go extra mile. But assuming that women venture capitalists are going to be easy on you is something that you too have a bias toward them, right?
I'm going to get into the last question. And just before we do that, I hope you will leave your contact details in the chat. I saw that Brittany already did it. Arie, I hope you will do it as well, because we have a lot of interesting questions, but we are running a little bit short of time. To close this, I have to say I've been very privileged, and I have been very privileged to know you, and I truly admire what you both achieved. With a lot of mission, stubbornness, stamina, and some kind of magic, which is very hard to describe. Someone asked here, what do we need to do to take first steps to fight the system? And you're both fighting the system, or you're trying to mold it or shape it to be more fair, to be more equal, to be beneficial for everybody. What are the first steps? How do you go on the journey? Arie, I start with you.
How we do the well, for me, it's just globally really getting people involved and finding a champion. We've been doing this accelerator Silicon Valley, and the reason why we went global is there's so many people out there who want to make a difference. And so instead of going to the people who want change, you need to expand your horizon and go to the people who actually willing to do something. So some people, keep going as an investor and a venture capitalist and trying to have them change, but they have their mission. And so instead of keep going at it and trying to make people change, which is fine, but you also need to expand the horizon who really care. So it's not a quantity, sometimes it's a quality. And for us going global, we found amazing, influencer out there is doing the work. So I think getting a community involved, but what type of people, what is the profile, and who will march the and march the road and sing the song that we want to sing together. Because there's so much you can do as a leader. You know, you have to just get the movement and getting people involved.
Brittany.
I also agree with Arie that getting the community involved and banded around the impact that you are trying to create is the most important thing you can do. Again, that's why I'm so lucky to be speaking at a film festival right now, because I was able to be a part of a movement. And that was because the types of content that we created, the communications and campaigns that we've been running are all around finding the people in the community that care about these issues and rallying them behind calls to action. You know, what can you do to make a difference? You know, number one, call your legislators. Tell them that you care about a particular topic. You know, educate yourself, educate your family and your community on the topics that you care about. Produce content and speak as often as possible about the issues that you're trying to solve, and realize that it's never easy. It's always going to be an uphill battle, but you know, the harder you work, the more you see those results. But I really think banding community around a topic that everyone can identify with and care about and take action on is the most important thing to do.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Arie. Thank you so much, Brittany. It's been a very big honor and a pleasure of mine of having you with us today on this beautiful evening here in Paris. You're always welcome to Cannes to advance your missions. Thank you for the audience. Have a wonderful evening and wonderful day wherever you are. And I hope that we can make the world a better place for female entrepreneurs. And I think we all have a very, very immense duty at this present time of the COVID, but also the upcoming elections across the world, to make sure who has our data, what they do with it, and how can we be more responsible. Thank you very much again, and I hope to see everybody at the future Cannes Next sessions.
Thank you.